Hello, welcome to AgriBusiness Global Live. My name is Renee Targos. I'm the editor for AgriBusiness Global and your host for today's webinar, Latin America, Opportunities and Challenges. We've got 5 panelists, so it's going to be a great discussion today. I wanted to talk to you about a special offer. We're having the AgriBusiness Global LATAM Conference in Panama City, Panama on May 14th and 15th. And everyone actually on this webinar will be there in person, and we'd love to meet you. As an attendee for this webinar, we have a special offer for you. If you use the code WEB200, so that's WEB200, you can get $200 off the current registration price, and you can register at abglatam.com. So we hope that you will join us at that conference. It's going to be a great opportunity for networking and also for sharing information. We've got some great speakers lined up for that. All right, so let me introduce our panelists since we've got 5 of them and we've got a short amount of time. I want to introduce Diego Taube. He is the director of Chempro, South America. We've got Dr. Nicolas Potrie, director of TAFIREL. We've got Javier Chavarro. He's agribusiness consultant and advisor. And then we've got Alexandre Quesada, founder and CEO of SmartTox and Win Honor LATAM. And then finally, we've got Lawrence Midler, Biologicals Analyst Lead for AgbioInvestor. Welcome, gentlemen. It's great to have you. All right, so Lawrence, we're going to start with you. Since biologicals are talked about so much in LATAM, especially Brazil, why don't you share with us 3 points we should be aware of in 2023?
That's great. Thank you very much, Renee. I'd just like to start off by thanking AgriBusiness Global for inviting me onto this panel and also for facilitating this dialogue with my fellow panelists. As the lead biologicals analyst at AgbioInvestor, I've been tracking the global biopesticide and biostimulants market closely. Therefore, I'd like to share with the audience some of the key trends and points of interest that we've identified in South America. So the foundation for this is in 2023, we conducted what we believe was the first of its kind primary market research study that surveyed growers in 9 key countries that had used biopesticides and or biostimulants. And within this included 2,500 interviews of growers using biologicals in Brazil, as well as 500 interviews in Argentina and 500 in Chile. In addition to this survey, we also questioned growers on several qualitative aspects, including grower sentiment, product usage, sources of information, seed treatment sourcing, and what the overall spray program was, including other conventional pesticides, if any. So the first trend that I'd like to highlight is that the market research study identified row crop usage in parts of South America is likely to continue growing faster than the fruit and veg biologicals market. So within Brazil, from a crop perspective, there was in excess of 80% row crop usage, both for biopesticides and biostimulants that we identified. When looking at Argentina, the majority of the market, around 70%, was attributed to row crops. And in Chile, unsurprisingly, the majority of the market was attributed to fruit and veg at over 90% for biopesticides and around 3/4 for biostimulants. So looking specifically at Brazil, when we asked growers whether they intended to use more or less biological products in the future, the vast majority of growers indicated that they did intend to use at least the same or more products in the future. Within this, 40% of maize growers and 25% of soybean growers indicated that they intended to use more biological products. In Argentina, there was a higher number of non-responses compared to Brazil. However, where the grower had indicated an intention, the majority of responses in the surveyed row crops did indicate at least the same or more levels in the future. Within soybeans, wheat and sugarcane, around half of respondents intended to use more biological products in the future, with most of the remainder indicating a similar level of usage, with only a small number of less answers. Maize in the country was somewhat different in that the proportion of respondents intending to use more bioproducts was lower compared to other row crops at around 40%. And the share of less answers, conversely, was higher at around 20%. So this could indicate some issues with efficacy of the available products in that crop, and also some crop-specific issues surrounding grower education and correct product usage. In Chile, when asked about future intentions within row crops, we surveyed maize. Interestingly here, the proportion of more answers was around 55%, so relatively high. And also there could potentially be some similar issues around grower education in this particular market, particularly as row crops, perhaps more of an emerging segment. So the point that I'm making here in this first trend is that the biopesticide and biostimulants have already significantly penetrated the row crop markets in Brazil and Argentina. So we do expect further volume increases in the future. Key to the opportunities in these countries will, of course, be a robust go-to-market strategy that will be needed to capitalise on these growing markets. There's also been a significant amount of government support, particularly in Brazil, and a more conducive regulatory system in that market, which has very much underpinned the success in that particular market. So that could potentially be replicated in other South American markets. Coming on to the second point that I'd like to highlight, and also a finding of the market research, we noted that the decision-making process of growers purchasing bioproducts was highly nuanced with regards to where growers receive information on products, what the sources of recommendation were, and also the features that growers valued the most in products. So in row crops surveyed in Brazil, so cotton, maize, and soybean, the most significant sources of information and influence in the decision-making process actually came from the agronomist and advisor, followed by the cooperative. In fruits, we see that it was actually other growers and cooperatives that played a more important role, but also in combination with the agronomists. In specialities in Brazil, the agronomists and other growers were also important sources of information, but so was the internet. So that just really highlights the different approach that may be needed down to the very specific country and crop segments. In Argentina, unlike most other countries, most growers across the surveyed row crops and fruit and veg mainly get their information and decision-making from the manufacturers' representatives. However, agronomists and distributors were also important. In Chile, down to the nature of the market, other growers were the key sources of information, particularly in field crops such as potato and maize. So this does suggest strong interaction and discussion between grower communities. Obviously, there's a lot of specialty crops and fruit and veg crops grown in specific areas, so that may account for some of the trend in those fruit and veg and specialty crops. If we take all of this into perspective, it's clear that the go-to-market strategy of companies seeking to enter these segments with biologicals will need to be tailored to these different sources of information and also building trust through those unique channels. And lastly, the third point that I'd like to highlight is that the survey that we conducted also identified that there still exist challenges surrounding grower awareness, correct product usage, efficacy problems, as well as high cost and how products are being positioned by companies to growers. So, for example, we did in fact identify some biostimulants products that actually only contained a mineral NPK active. So they were being positioned either as biostimulants or biofertilizers, which could potentially create some confusion in the evolving industry. We also noted that there was a large number of on-farm processed biopesticides and biostimulant brews, utilising things like farm byproducts such as sugarcane, vinasse, as well as other basic substances such as vinegar, sodium hydrogen carbonate, and so on. Biodynamic practices, there was also a certain amount identified in the survey responses, things like Preparation 500, which utilises fresh cow manure packed into cow horns, buried into the ground, and then used as a spray solution the subsequent season. So there's clearly a mix of different approaches in the market, and these clearly represent non-traded products. So there is the potential for that to remain a feature of the industry in the future, taking account of on-farm production, some of the basic substances in the future. But I believe that companies and governmental agencies can work towards promoting traded biological product usage, particularly in some of the smaller, poorer farms, particularly supported by government subsidies and also programs to promote overall usage in those particular farms. We have also identified some illicit and illegal pesticide usage that will, of course, remain a feature of many markets, not just in South America, but we've also noted in India and in China, as well as other parts of Asia. This is also a feature, so it's again where regulators and industry can work together, particularly in conjunction with e-retail and distributors, to reduce that as a factor going forward. Okay, so that covers my 3 points, and I'd like to hand over to the next speaker.
Yeah. Just before we do, Lawrence, I know that you talked about the education, the importance of educating the grower, and a lot of companies, trying to work with the retailers so that they can do that. Are you finding that, I don't know if your survey covered this at all, but were there any challenges as far as that? Because I know some of the bigger companies are actually buying further down the channel. And so I don't know if that is causing difficulty for smaller companies that want to come in and bring their product to market. Were you seeing anything like that?
It's certainly an issue around grower awareness, because in the survey responses we did actually identify that some growers were actually identifying a biostimulant product as a biocontrol product, and vice versa. When we knew this brand contains this active, we know what the label registration indicates the usage is for. So there were challenges around that. It is going to be a challenge, particularly for smaller companies coming in. If there is illicit products on the market, counterfeit products, even the larger companies, that's of course an issue, because that can potentially damage a particular company's brand, and particularly with things like biostimulants, where some growers are using them for the first time. If they don't see a return on investment in the first season because of poor efficacy, or the product they've bought isn't what they think it is, that could potentially create an issue for not just that company's brand, but the overall perception of biostimulants and biocontrol going forward.
Yeah, great point. All right, thank you very much. All right, we're going to go to our next panelist, who's Alexandre Quesada. He's going to be talking to us about regulations and 3 points to keep an eye on for LATAM for this rest of the year. So Alexandre, please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Renee, for your question and for the introduction of myself. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the organization and for inviting me to make this presentation. Today, we're talking about Mexico, Andean countries, and Brazil. So answering to your question, Mr. Renee, Central America and Mexico have been making efforts to harmonize regulatory standards for pesticides, reflecting on a broad trend increasing regulatory cooperation and covering agriculture and environmental policies. So Central America countries like Costa Rica, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama, and Dominican Republic joined a full member as a Central American integrated system named SICA. This group has been working on several initiatives to aim harmonized regulations. SICA efforts are focused on creating a more integrated regional market, which includes standardized regulations across member states to facilitate flow of goods, including agriculture products. There is another trade agreement under discussion, which are the North American Free Trade Agreement named NAFTA, and the USMCA, United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, which both of them encourage regulatory cooperation among these countries. Although the main focus here is on North America, the effects on regulatory practices can expand its influence policies in Central America due to Mexico's importance in both regions. That can be facilitated by strategic geographic position of Mexico. The main pesticide regulatory harmonization efforts are, first, regulatory cooperation. So initiatives aimed to share information and best practices among regulatory agencies in Central America and Mexico has been taken so far. This includes the evaluation of pesticide safety and efficacy, registration process, and the monitoring of pesticide residues in food and in the environment. The second one is the technical assistance. International organization and cooperation agencies, including FAO and ICA, I'll explain ICA, Inter-American Institute for Cooperation and on Agriculture, have been involved in providing technical assistance to help countries align their pesticides regulation. And last but not least, the local projects and programs are aimed to harmonize pesticide regulations. For example, efforts to establish common methodologies for risk assessment, mutual recognition of pesticides registrations, and coordinated approaches to manage pesticide residues and food. Concerning this matter, authorities are evaluating case by case any possibility of harmonization that is happening all over the world. Looking to the future, harmonization faces challenges, including differences in regulatory frameworks, the level of technical and institutional capacity, and the need of balance in the trade facilitation. Of course, progress has been made, but the speediness and the coverage of this harmonization may vary significantly across countries. At the end, the final goal is to achieve the balance between facilitating trades, ensuring the safety of agriculture products, and protecting the environmental and the health. There is no estimated date to accomplish this evaluation as far as we are aware of, but the governments of these countries are focused on getting this harmonization done. Concerning Brazil, the regulatory updating, the new legislation, which is being discussed back in Brazil, is the new law 14,785 from 2023, which is the main subject nowadays in the country concerning pesticide subjects, as well as the regulatory harmonization between some Mercosur countries. These new legislations came to update the way our three ministries responsible for regulating pesticides registration in Brazil communicate between each other, and also some other changes. Let's take a 17 this one.
Yeah, these are interesting points that you're bringing up. And I just wanted to let our attendees know that Alexandre was interviewed for articles for AgriBusiness Global ABG Direct. So you can learn more about what he's talking about if you want to check out the publication.
That's right. That's all inside that publication. So I will start about that change of legislation with the responsibility of MAPA, the Minister of Agriculture. It is still their responsibility being the authority to register pesticides in the country. And of course, there is still need to be evaluated by Anvisa, which is the health agency, as well as the IBAMA, which is the environmental ministry. Now, it's not needed to submit one dossier of each of these authorities like before. So before you needed to have 3 dossiers and submit for each one of them. So that will be MAPA responsibility from now on. So the registrant will submit the dossier only to MAPA. The timeline of registration and post-registration got better, which makes Brazil market more attractive for all the products that the manufacturers want to register back in Brazil. The timeline to register the technical and formulated products under equivalence reduced to 2 years each one. Of course, we need to check because that's really recent change. So we need to evaluate how it will work as any legislation which changes in any country. Another change is that companies has the same 2 years to start commercializing the products after registration is granted, with the penalty to have the registration canceled if it does not happen at this time. So why this is put in the law? This clause came to reduce the number of claims from the products that are not being marketed. So you have a lot of products that's not in the market, and that makes the line of evaluation very huge. So that's why they create that law, to take it out, the products that are not being commercialized. We are monitoring these timelines once the law has been published in 2023, as I said. Concerning the risk assessment overview, it becomes mandatory for a new product registration, and also for any change in the any change that implies in an increase of dose, crop extension, application equipment change, or even product revaluation. Another change is that formulations like EC, WP, SC, and SL are considered similar as established by FAO. So it means that it's possible to use studies from one precise formulation EC for SC, for example, since it attains the criteria of this exemption. Although all these main changes has been made, there is an order which is still under discussions, which are the federal registration, once is granted, can be automatically approved for use and commercialization in the states. The state registration will not longer exist, but during the year of 2024, it will be valid through the law implementation period. There is a certain moment that companies has to implement that law. So São Paulo and Minas Gerais has already adopted the law according to MAPA. The main discussion here is how to turn the state's fees into a single registration fee, because they want to make one single registration, taking out the fees from the state. So this is still being under discussion. There is a need to better understand what new product means concerning the fulfillment of a EUP, known by most of you by RET, right? So for biologicals, for example, would a new strain be a new product? So we need to figure it out for all scenarios, not only for pesticides that we most know, but the biological, which is the new market nowadays. Some definitions are missing in the law, like semiochemicals and insecticides growth regulators. That is under discussion too, so it needs to be inside the legislation. There is another discussion which is currently in place, which are the harmonization between Mercosur countries, as we have discussed before by Andine and Mexico, Andine countries and Mexico. MAPA is in contact with Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay to discuss possible harmonization process between them. Like the Andine countries and Mexico, which has a group of discussion, Brazil also has a group of discussion named Southern Agriculture Council, which where the ministries of agriculture from Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay are meeting to discuss the strategic subjects for agriculture. Mercosur technical regulation was signed by the competent bodies of these countries for defining ways to trade and import between them without interfering in their country autonomy, because each country has their own autonomy and that needs to be respected. Mm-hmm. However, the authorities are evaluating case by case any possibility of harmonization, as we have discussed before. So that's everything that I brought to you today. And as Mrs. Renee said, we are going to talk a little bit more about other countries and Panama exhibition, and I think we can meet there and discuss a little bit more about those countries' update regulation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alexandre. Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know that I've already seen Alexandre's PowerPoint presentation that he's going to be doing in Panama, and it is very extensive and it is very, very good information. So thank you, Alexandre. All right, so
thank you.
I'm not going to ask any questions so that we can make sure the audience gets their questions, because we have some in the Q&A. So Javier, let's talk with you. Javier writes for AgriBusiness Global Direct, and he has gave us 2 articles about doing business in South America, and then one's coming out in May about Central America. So Javier, can you talk to us just 3 points, kind of real quick, about how to do business in LATAM? What do people need to know?
Thank you, Renee. I think that we have to clarify that we are in the business of the future. Remember that we are today 8 billion people in the world, and by the 2050 we are going to be around 10 billion people. So we need to increase the amount of production of food for all of these people are going to have in these dates. There are 3 points that we have to take in account when we talk about Latin America. The first point is the land tenure. Yeah, have you heard that Bill Gates is buying a lot of land, especially in the US? He has today around 100,000 hectares of land, yeah, because he's thinking about what he's going to have for the future. Have you heard that many other companies, many other multinationals, and many other countries are trying to buy land here in Latin America? Those are the big points that we have to take in mind, because this game is going to be changing through the time. Yeah. The second point is that Latin America is in the focus of attention of all around the world, because Latin America is today the pantry for the world, not only for grains, but for fruits and vegetables, because we are the basic producers all of these materials, because we are the area that most exports to the world, yeah, especially this kind of products, grains, vegetables, and fruit. And we have the land in Latin America. We have the land, we have diversity of weather, we have a visionary people that work especially in agri-export and agro-industrial areas, yeah, to try to give the best products for all the world, yeah. And now we have to be in front of 2 different things about people, yeah. People is thinking about consciences of health, and they are talking about the food that are very good for them. And many people are thinking about organic production. That means that it requires a lot of efforts, a lot of products like biologicals. It's a mixing of biologicals and chemicals to try to offer the best product for the people that are consuming this kind of product. But many other people are requiring artificial or processing foods that are normally consuming. Yeah. Now we have to think about what will be the future of the land, of the future of the production, because today there is an interesting phenomenon is happening. People is returning from the city to the country. For that reason, many land in the country are increasing their value. Yeah, many people are trying to avoid the problems of the city, and they're going to try to go to the country. And the way of the way to be there in the country, they have to start producing their food. Yeah, at the end, we have a big potential here in Latin America, but we have to put technology, we have to increase productivity, and we have to give added value to the products we have. If we think about fruit and vegetables, we can mention Chile, Peru, Ecuador, Mexico, Guatemala, Costa Rica, that are producing not only fruit, but vegetables too, yeah? And countries like Brazil, Argentina, Bolivia, Paraguay, Uruguay, that are producing grains, yeah? Not only soybeans, but corn and wheat, that are basis for the export for the country. For that reason, we have to think in all of these points. We are moving from the traditional chemistry control problems in the field to a mixing situation now. This is biologicals, this is chemistry, and an IPM situation to handle the problems they have there. For that reason, we have to, as I mentioned earlier, we are in the business of the future, and we have to think about what will be the most important thing we are going to give to these areas to increase the food we are going to give to the people by 2050.
Mm-hmm. I think that's right. I know there's a lot of investment in regenerative agriculture in Brazil. And, some of the strategies that you're talking about, being aware of the crop and what the farmers, the growers' needs are. I talked to one of our advisory board, Daniel Traverso from Anasac. He was talking about how their company focuses on innovation. And so that there's a lot of, resistance from typical, I guess, products that are commonly used or being banned. So there's a lot of opportunity, especially when there's oversupply in the market, to look specifically for that crop that grower, that need, and then offer your product. So, all right, well, in the so that we can keep up with time, I'm going to go to Dr. Potrie. Nicolas, could you give us an update on the Mercosur countries and the ties with Southeast Asia? I know you traveled a lot last year making those contacts.
Yes, that's correct, Renee. Thank you so much for inviting us today. And in the same line that Javier was talking about our region, we would like to tell that sometimes it's difficult to separate in Latin America the political with economical things. This year, 2024, we will have more than 100 elections around the world, around 60 to 70 change of presidencies. And I think, as Alexandre explained about Brazil, Diego will explain more deeply about the political situation in Argentina. But talking about Mercosur countries, we know that it's the association of Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and Paraguay. Chile and Bolivia are related associated countries, but we need to know that it's the closest region in the world, talking about the trade agreements. Mercosur has more than 30 years of history, but until now is still being very close in terms of non-tariff measures and in average of trade measures is the double this kind of tariff than the rest of the world. So this make us to think how we can put our production of food in the rest of the world. China is our first option, but it's difficult to think in a free trade agreement between Mercosur and China nowadays, because the situation of China that now grows not so far as before, but still the numbers good. 4.5% the International Monetary Fund said for 2024 and 4.3 for 2025. Comparing US and Europe still being high rates of growing. So it's very important that we look this area. But also, not only look at China. For us, in South Cone countries, we need to focus in new strategies, new agenda. This is a very important idea to look Southeast Asia countries, like ASEAN, that is Association of Southeast Asia countries. There are more than 600 people, 600 million people. So for us that we produce food, we need to look in this area. Mercosur already last year signed an agreement with Singapore, start some conversations also with Indonesia, but we need to look separately also the countries, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, Philippines. It's a really big opportunity, a very big opportunity for our countries. New strategies for a new world. We need to think in the global context and the environmental crisis, the logistics difficulties. We can see that the prices of the freights last year from Asia to Latin America grows, but from Latin America to Asia, not. So we need to look in all the situation when we think what we are going to grow in terms of grains this season. For example, soybean price now is better, is stable comparing last year, that we face very big difficulties in Argentina and Uruguay because the big drop that we have, so the production goes down. Now the price and the predictions of the US area already is finished, so the price still stable for soybean, if we talk about soybean. So the farmers and the growers need to think how to mitigate the risks. So one way is to make change of the crops every year. Another is to make insurance of the area that they plant. So, for example, they can make part of the land insurance and the other part depend on the market. So this can be sure the growers a price, because sometimes the weather, the difficulties in geopolitical problems can make the difference price. So it's very important, these new strategies that the farmers and the growers will think for be sure that the production will be stable. So the evolution of the grain markets many factors operate. As I said before, the geopolitical problems affect this price. The war in Middle East, the war between Russia and Ukraine. So these kind of alternatives that they need to think, like irrigation to have more production, like new technology to have more productions. But this only is not enough. For the growers and the farmers also, they need to think in opening the market. So this kind of free trade agreements will help and will open more markets to put the foods in good competition comparing another countries in the world. So this is very important to study the context in our business. Also the regulation for the pesticides, the biologicals, but also we need to think how we put our production, and because the food that we produce here is for the rest of the world. So this kind of challenges that we are facing, and we face, for example, in the crisis of the COVID-19, is very important to have relation between suppliers and customers. This is very important because to face these problems, if we know and if we each understand each other, is easier to do the business.
So when you went to Southeast Asia last year, you were making a lot of different sort of connections with the different leaders of the countries. Was there maybe like one point that you could share with us that you thought was an unusual and a possible opportunity?
Yes, for us that we have more experience in doing business with China, we saw that Southeast Asia brings us a lot of opportunities in terms of growth, in terms of GDP growth, population. In the same group, we put India also, because it has percentage that more than 6%, the predictions of the growth. And we talk with many leaders of organizations, of private business chambers and organizations that promote these free trade agreements, no matter which political party is in the country. They are thinking in global security food, in legal certainty when they do business in grains, in food, and the food security is the top priority for these leaders. So we need to take advantage of this situation. And of course, Latin America has a lot of advantage. As Javier said, the land, the legal security, the peace, and the stability to produce this production that has a lot of technology. Many people say, no, they only produce basic products. No, the meat, the grains, the vegetables, everything that we produce here has a lot of technology. So this is very important to us to know that this region of the world keep growing and we need to focus on it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to go to our last panelist, Diego Taube, and he's got a PowerPoint. So we're going to share that with you. And then, Diego, please take it away.
Hi, Renee. Hi, all. Thanks for letting me participate. Here, if you see the photo, they're cactus, and everybody would have expected soya or corn or wheat or whatever, but they're cactus. And why is the cactus there? Because it's symbol, it's a metaphor of Argentina. We have a lot of thorns that if you touch it too hard without knowing it, you will get a thumb in your finger. But once you open it correctly, you will see there's aloe vera and there's water, and it's even sweet. So, well, let me try you. Everybody's angry at Argentina because of the payments and everything. So I'll try to show you that if we cooperate together, we can reach the other part of not the thorns, but the sweet and the water that is needed in the desert. So this is the first one. If you want to go to the next one, okay. So I'm making three quick. This is I'll speak and try to explain, which is very difficult, the different exchange rates we have, the movements they're having lately, or not have been, but okay. regarding import and export duties for agri-crop, and alternatives for payments to suppliers, which is what I guess everybody wants to hear about. So if we go to the next one, please. Okay. This is not a chromatogram. This is not an electrocardiogram. If you see the red line is the unofficial exchange rate to the dollar, peso to the. If you see the black line, you will see there's some. It follows a similar pattern. That's the official exchange rate. So if you see in December 2023, it jumped from something like 300 to 800, the black line. And the red line, the what we call the blue market, because we cannot say black because black is illegal. Blue is as illegal as black, but it's the same. We call it the free US dollar. Today it's around 1,000 pesos for $1. While if you go to the bank to change, you will get around 890. So today the difference is 10, 12%. It's not that big. A couple of months ago, the difference was of 100%. Below, you will see it says Dollar Banco Nación. This is something I printed today, so that this is from the newspaper. But you can see how it works. We have Dollar Banco Nación, which is the official rate. Dollar Turista, this is a tourist. If you go abroad and pay with a credit card, you will have to pay for each dollar you spend $1,400 pesos, sorry. Then there's the black market, which yesterday closed at 1,035. And then this last two, contado con liquidación and MEP, are two different ways that the companies could have to make transference to abroad. They are based on an arbitration of pesos. You buy dollar-linked Argentinian bonds. You need to have an account abroad. You transfer the bonds, you sell the bonds, and then you could transfer. But there are some tricks when you are doing this. So working in Argentina without knowing what you're doing is very, very complicated. And if we go to the other one, please, Renee. Well, then we have Toto Caputo. He's the finance minister. During the campaign for the election, the now President Milei had promised that he was going to decrease the export taxes, which is 35% for soya, 20, 25, depending on the other crops, but it's still at 35%. He was going to decrease them. He said at least gradually until they reach zero. Mr. Milei is in the office for 4 months already. This did not happen. The export tax continues as it was. And imagine normal countries, as I always say, normal countries give incentives for the exports. Argentina taxes them with 35%. So what Mr. Caputo said on April the 8th, he says he was going to decrease the import tax for some herbicides. And he says to improve the approval of SENASA. Nobody knows what he meant. So basically he says the formulated atrazine, glyphosate, and 2,4-D are going to reduce the import duty from 35% to 12.6%. And additionally, he was going to decrease the import license of atrazine from 24 to 10.8%. Then on the 10th, he also says that they're going to decrease the import licenses to take to zero the import duties for urea and to the mixtures with ammonium nitrate, which today were in 5.4 and 3.6%. It's important to clarify, we have a plant that produces urea in Argentina. It's called Profertil. It's a joint venture between Nutrien and YPF. It is not able to give enough granulated urea to the whole market. And if you want to go to the next one, Renee, please. So what happened? As I showed you before, there was this 2 different tweets from Mr. Caputo. Mr. Caputo only achieved the opposite of what he was expecting. He thought that due to the lack of knowledge, he says, okay, I will open the borders so that everybody can import formulated 2,4-D, formulated atrazine, formulated glyphosate, and I will decrease the import line. I will decrease the taxes, the import tax. What happened? You cannot import if you don't have a register. So this discount in the import duties will only be kept by the importers, which will be the same companies that were importing before, or by the exporters, because the exporters will make a calculation and says, hey, if you pay less import duties, you can pay me more for my product. So instead of achieving what he wanted to achieve, Mr. Caputo, as I said, got the opposite. The market is paralyzed, waiting for the unofficial announcement to become official when it appears in the official gazette. We call it Boletín Oficial. So everybody is sitting, waiting, and trying to see what happens. The industry is absolutely unhappy because when you imported technical 2,4-D, glyphosate, and atrazine, there was enough capacity to formulate all these products in Argentina. So now, he paralyzed everything. The plants are not working because everybody's trying to see what happens, and there's no movement. So we will have now the wheat campaign coming. The prices are very low, and nobody is knowing what they will do. And we know very well that in agriculture, you have certain time to do your things. It's not like you're starting a factory for cars. Factories for cars or for telephones, you can start whenever. Agriculture is, you've got the seasons and you must respect them. So this one is another one. If we go to the next one, please. Right? Okay, and now I think this the most important thing for many of those that are there. When the previous administration stopped all the payments to abroad in June, July, August last year. So we faced a situation in which the importers had money in their bank account and they were willing and they really wanted to pay to their suppliers from abroad, and they were not allowed by the government. Mr. Milei took the office on 10th of December, and then, well, they started saying what they had. The central bank had no reserves, at all. Now, fortunately, we have reserves. We've been accumulating a lot of reserves. And by the end of December, beginning of January, they came with a scheme for the payment to the suppliers from abroad. So they made, the first thing they did is to make a differentiation between whatever was imported before December 13 and what was imported after December 13. So I'll start with the bad, and then we go to the more positive to close in a nice way. So before, for everything that was imported before December 13, the government issued 3 different bonds. They were called BOPREAL 1, 2, and 3. And the different bonds have different due dates and interest rates and ways of amortization, and it's complicated. And some people, some suppliers offered, some importers offered their suppliers to buy the bonds and to transfer the bonds to them. And the supplier kept the bonds and hoping that the payment was going to be done punctually. And well, there was one bond, the Series 1, that was paying 5% per annum, but amortization was only in 2027, and it was very late. Then there was a second series, which was paying no interest, but you were getting payments every month. And then there was a new one, the Series 3. This is very technical, yes, that it will be due May 2026 and pays 3% per annum. I was in the office of the Secretary of Commerce because I'm the president of the Argentinian Chamber of Chemical Products. So I was there with this little table that you have over there with this chart, and with some other colleagues of the chamber. And one of my colleagues told the Secretary of Commerce, you pay me 5%, the US Treasury bonds pay me 5%. In which ones will you invest? And of course, the Secretary of Commerce got a little bit red. He was shy, and well, he said, this is what we have for the moment. We will be making new resolutions. We will be flexibilizing the ways of paying, and you will be hearing from us. So if you want to go, Renee, to the next one.
Tiago, I just want to let you know we're kind of running out of time, so for questions.
2 seconds.
Okay.
2 seconds. The next one is after the 13th of December. Every import that took place after the 13th of December can be paid at due date. The government, the agricultural imports, agrochemicals, fertilizers have a special position. They can be paid 30 days after customs clearance. And last week, they came with a new resolution saying that if you are a small, small, or medium company, you can transfer all what you have to pay. It doesn't matter if it's agrochemical or whatever, at 30 days from customs clearance. And this is good because it shows it, and it's working because we see transfers going out. If you want the last one, well, as I said, the new imports are being paid punctually, and the old ones are in the process. The government is updating regulations, making more flexible as the reserves of the central bank are growing. The gap between the exchange rates is narrowing, which is an incentive for importers to cancel the debt and also to import more. And last but not least, we expect a good agricultural season. And that's it. Sorry, I was too long.
No, that's okay. Thank you. That was very thorough and interesting. Yeah, I always have a hard time understanding what's happening in Argentina, Diego. So I always appreciate it when you explain it to me because it makes more sense.
Don't worry, you will never understand it. We don't understand it, so don't worry.
All right. Let's see. We've got Nicolas. We've got a question for you. What could be the main advantage for Latin American export growers if we compare against African growers that are closer to the Asian countries' markets?
If we compare Africa with Latin America, the distance, I think, is not the main thing. The main thing will be the tariff, right? That's the reason we try to push with a private association. The government, as Diego said, try to talk with the politicals and explain that we need to open the economies. The only way is the free trade agreements that we can compete, for example, with New Zealand or also with Australia, that of course is closer than Southeast Asia countries and China, of course.
Okay. All right, great. I had a question for Alexandre about pollinator health for regulations. Is that something that you see that's going to be happening throughout all Latin America, or is it just focused more on Brazil and a couple of other countries?
I believe that will be focused in all Latin America countries, but of course, as it is being discussed more in Brazil, that we will start from here, but as we are discussing about the harmonizations too, that can be gather all the information from all of the countries that intends to make that harmonization to deal and to build it together. So regulations is like that. You need to discuss and then discuss with the companies which actually are the ones which has the knowledge and change with the authorities, in order to regulate in the best way. And other way out of that will be like useless, I believe.
Okay. Lawrence, a question for you. So what, you talked about the different biologicals and it sounded like I think it was dealing with pests and then biostimulants. What about biologicals for dealing with weed? And do you see anything coming onto the market that are dealing with like the herbicides?
Yeah, it's still a very small and niche area of the industry. We are seeing a greater focus on R&D products within herbicides, but it's still going to remain a very small portion of the market. Of course, the Holy Grail is a cheap, broadly efficacious herbicide that could, replace glyphosate. That would be, of course, the Holy Grail. But I think we're still a long way off from that, particularly down to cost of application. I think it's going to be one of the key challenges with developing a successful bioherbicide in the market. But it's certainly growing quite fast from a small base.
Are there any companies that are taking the lead with that, with herbicides in the biological industry?
I'd have to look at the results of our market research study, but it's certainly a question that we could answer after the call.
Sure. Okay, great. And Diego, when you were talking about expecting a good season, can you tell me one point that you're looking at as far as how that will be?
Well, we are coming from a very, very, very bad drought. It was the worst, I think, in 100 years. Until we had everything cannot be perfect, yes, but until last week, the expectations of kilos per hectare was very, very, very good. We had some strong storms last week, and they believe we could lose around 10% of the total output, but still it will be a good one. The farmers will be able to pay all their debt, and the government will be happy because they will be collecting a lot of export taxes. So this is what we're meaning when we say it's good.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. We are at the end of the webinar, and I want to thank all of you gentlemen for coming today and sharing your expertise with us. And thank you all for attending. Again, everyone that you're seeing here will be at the AgriBusiness Global LATAM conference. So we hope to see you there. Again, please use the code WEB200 to get $200 off of the current registration price. All right. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your expertise and your great opinions.
Thank you, Renee.
Goodbye.